show, Jake.
Thanks for having me, Hobby.
What are some exciting startup ideas, trends that you're seeing going on in this space?
Yeah, a lot of excitement around AI.
What attracted you to working with startups in general?
A bunch of things drew me to it.
What is Capital Factory trying to do from the other side of fostering that community?
It was just a really great way to, one, learn about venture capital. What are like experiences that shape the way you see the world? It's important to kind of first connect with people on a human level, and
100%.
then you can layer in the other stuff.
What's exciting you in the AI space?
Now, two areas that I'm really interested in. One is personalized education and learning.
What's one question you have for a future guest? Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. Today we have on Jake O'Shea. He had his early career as an intern across various companies like South by Southwest. He was the director of platform at Capital Factory for 3-4 years, which is the center of gravity for startups in Austin. Director of portfolio at Foundation Capital. He's been a mentor at a couple different accelerators and Longhorn Startup Accelerator. And he's currently the principal at Antler in Austin. Welcome to the show, Jake.
Thanks for having me, Hobby. Good to be here.
So the Antler cohort recently kicked off, and I think you said you have 80 plus founders in the Austin office. What are some exciting startup ideas, trends that you're seeing going on in this space?
Yeah, a lot of excitement around AI, obviously. We were talking before this started, but AI can be kind of a buzzword, but realistically, it's just how people are building software nowadays. So lots of interesting ideas. In recruiting, saw tons of folks trying to build AI companions for mental health, and a lot of people trying to use language models for personal finance or wealth management use cases. In terms of the founders in the residency right now, it's super broad, actually. We don't really have density around any one area. We've got folks building, platforms for veterans to get discounts wherever they apply to military members, and folks attacking supply chain and making it more visible and helping companies build in a more kind of climate conscious or eco-friendly way. We've got companies helping procurement industry. It's really all over. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Is there a particular thesis that Antler is looking out for that, or maybe you're focusing on more, or is it the right idea with the right founder, or how do you guys think about that stuff?
Yeah, no industry sector focus, totally agnostic, definitely more focused on the founder than anything. I'd say the cohort, the residency right now is 50% people that have been building in a space for a little while, usually have an MVP, some early customers, but haven't quite hit kind of venture exponential growth territory yet. The other 50%, maybe they have an idea of a space they want to build in, but they haven't actually started building it yet. So that's really exciting to see. They're coming in, and their goal for the next 8 weeks is basically talk to as many customers as possible, figure out what is it that they desire, what's the problem that you can solve for them, how can you create a value proposition that addresses that, and then at the end of all that, how do you package that and deliver that via a product. But at Antler, we really talk a lot about talking to your customer and focusing really on what they want and how you can create a value proposition to address that before you start writing code, building products, 100%. Et cetera.
Going off on that tangent, do you think there's ever too many customers you can talk to or too little? Do you think there's a good sweet spot to decide when the signal looks good for me to, oh, hey, that I found a problem or I found a solution?
It's a good question. I think you just need conviction personally as the entrepreneur that I've talked to enough. I think oftentimes founders think that talking to like 20 customers is enough. It's probably closer to like 50. There's no kind of rules to it. The interesting thing is that for any given like space or industry that you want to build in, there's probably like a dozen potential customers, just anyone really that's a stakeholder. And so then it becomes an interesting exercise of like, okay, well, which ones do you have the most likelihood of actually getting in front of and talking to? Which ones have desires that are fairly straightforward to solve, where you could, create value there. So it's a lot of iterative, just talking to people and testing lots of different things and seeing where you both have the easiest time getting in front of these people, but also have the most likelihood of actually addressing something that they're looking for and creating value for them.
What do you think is one thing that early stage founders or first time founders often get wrong with customer interviews? And I'm asking because I come from a product background, and there's a whole philosophy and style to how to conduct customer interviews. Have you noticed a pattern or just something that lacks for
Definitely. It's always, at least in my experience, it's alluding to what the product is or asking about the product directly instead of asking about what are your problems,
100%.
why are they your problems, etc. You're just not going to get the right type of feedback or input if you're approaching it from like a product first standpoint. You got to really focus the conversation on who they are and what they want. And that will then generate a bunch of ideas that could lead to a product. But I think starting with the product in mind, you're not going to get anything good out of that conversation.
100%. Are there any tips or recommendations you have for anyone listening on a good resource or book or podcast to just study about how to conduct customer interviews? Anything that comes to mind?
I'm sure there's a ton of great content out there. I think honestly, as long as you're asking the customer about what their problems are and try to dig into like the first principles, just keep asking why.
Yeah.
If you approach it with that framework, you're going to do the right things and you're going to get the right info. So no content specifically, but I think if you approach it that way, it's hard for it not to be valuable.
100%. I feel like every time I'm talking to someone who's wants an app built or is looking for product advice, they go with the notion of exactly like you said, I'm going to ask them if they like my solution. And you get a lot of false positive because if you put something in front of someone, they'll be like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. No one's going to be like, I want that, right? There's going to be a different sort of answer, but just a very important skill to learn is just how do you navigate around you get them to say their problem, get them to get the solution out of them.
Yeah.
It's hard. The inclination is always to be like, well, what if I built you this? Would you use it? And that's not always the right signal to look for.
Yeah. I think sometimes the one caveat would be if it's something really hard to wrap your head around, like what does this actually look like?
Yeah.
But even then, that doesn't mean go build the full product. It
100%.
means create a mock-up or something that helps them wrap their head around it. Or if it's really not that complex, it's probably not what they want. Because if it was, they would have some conception of that in their head and they'd get really excited.
100%. Sweet. Going back to your journey real quick, what attracted you to working with startups in general on the VC side, investing side, working with different firms? Was there anything that drew you to it? It just happened, or why come into this space?
Yeah, definitely a bunch of things drew me to it. I grew up in Houston in a suburb, was a swimmer in high school, but also really into competitive debate. And competitive debate in high school is all about taking multiple sides of an argument, trying to convince people of your point of view. There's no right or wrong. It's just, can you convince people that this is the right approach? And I really loved the idea aspect of it and talking about ideas and trying to take both sides of an argument. And so actually came to college getting a government degree, thinking I was going to work in lobbying or in a congressional office or doing something within the government. And then did an internship my freshman summer, the summer of 2016, which is when Trump v. Hillary was heating up. And it was honestly a great experience. Had a lot of fun. I did shots with my congressional representative. It's just a lot of cool stories and cool experience. But I kind of had this realization that if you're working around the government, your business model is to make sure the other side is pissed off, or to make sure that your side is so pissed off about the other side that they give you more money to run your business. And it's not as much about actually like debating ideas and getting things done as it is about just driving donations and kind of doubling down on your team against the other team. And that never appealed to me. What I liked about debating was there was no right answer. There's gray areas everywhere and you can take both sides. That being said, like with a government degree, there's not a lot of options of what you can actually do career-wise. I didn't have a ton of career services that I could use to kind of help figure out other opportunities. So I started taking a bunch of random internships, just trying to figure out where Like, I liked discussing ideas. I liked them to be relevant and have some kind of impact on the world. And like personally, I want to be able to point back to my work and say like, oh yeah, this impacted the way the world works in XYZ way. And so just started taking any job that looked interesting. Was an intern at a place called Water to Thrive, which is a local nonprofit that does water wells in East Africa. And through that process, they had me looking into hosting like a coffee festival in Austin. It was really interesting because Austin's a big coffee town. They do a lot of work in Ethiopia, the birthplace of coffee. And the process of trying to find coffee shop owners and baristas and the nonprofit and like just project managing that whole thing high level was really exciting, and I enjoyed it. And I kind of had this realization where, in college, I never cared about what I did coming out as much as I cared about, like, I don't want to move back home, and I want to be able to pay my bills, and I want to stay in Austin. And so I had this realization where I was like, I could probably run events similar to this myself and sell tickets and like pay to, live here and have that be my full-time job. So that was kind of my eye-opening to entrepreneurship as a career pathway.
Yeah.
And then obviously that led to startups. So I interned at a company here called Brobe, which is like a bra robe garment for women recovering from breast cancer. Yeah. So a really cool mission-driven company. Really kind of, it was a CEO and a COO, no one else. And I was kind of the everything intern. So did a bunch of interesting projects for them and just kind of fell in love with the startup atmosphere of, there's not really clearly defined roles. You wear a lot of hats. There's not like a do 2 years in this role, then get this promotion and do 2 years there. It's very much like grow to your level of capability and kind of see where that leads you. So once I kind of discovered startups, I've always had entrepreneurship in kind of the back of my mind. So then my mission became, all right, how do I work with as many entrepreneurs as possible? And one, like that'll help me learn a lot about what it's like to actually build and run a company. Yeah. But two, that kind of scratches that itch of talking about ideas and taking both sides of arguments and also having an impact on the world. So once I had that kind of clarity of direction, then it just became, how do I network my way into the industry? And so started joining clubs at UT and going to events locally and applied to like 7 different positions at Capital Factory before I finally got one. And nice. Had a really great mentor and a guy named Nick Spiller that kind of trained me up, coached me up, and put me in a position to grow and succeed. And really kind of lucky that I found it, because it's a really, really great, startups are everything that I've been looking for. So yeah, really just thankful that I discovered it.
How is the experience at Capital Factory? They're considered the center of gravity in Austin for startups, entrepreneurs, a little bit of everything. What does that look like working on the other side? Because I've been to a bunch of events there, but what is Capital Factory trying to do from the other side of fostering that community?
Yeah, it was really an incredible experience. I was there for 3 years, started off as an investor coordinator, became an associate on the IR team, managed the IR team, and then eventually was there, had a platform, kind of managing all the value add services for companies that joined their portfolio. So it was just a really great way to, one, learn about venture capital. Especially in my role, I was primarily helping their portfolio companies raise money from other VCs. But in order to do that, I had to learn a lot about VCs, how they evaluate companies, learn a lot about their business model, their ownership targets, their average check size, how they think about focusing on industry or geography, or just all the different ways that VC funds differentiate themselves. And at the same time, communicate that to founders and work really closely with founders and kind of help them succeed in that way. So it was just really great experience. I think they've done a great job bringing the Austin community together. They're very collaborative. At the fund that I went to after Capital Factory, it's a Bay Area fund, also really great, but the Bay Area VC scene is not quite as collaborative. It's just a lot more competitive. And Capital Factory's business model works really well with the other traditional VC funds in town. So they're able to basically just be a downstream funnel and funnel some of their best deals to other firms in town. So they've done a really good job kind of bringing the community together. And They've got a really strong brand and network, and companies that are part of their portfolio get early access to all these opportunities. And big business leaders and government officials and all the people that, when they come to Austin and want to explore the venture startup scene, Capital Factory is usually where they start there. So,
Nice.
yeah, it was just a really, really great way to learn, meet people, and kind of dip my toes in the VC water.
You talked about community, and you also run this event called AITX, which is one of the larger AI tech events in town. That gets a very good turnout. I think it's monthly at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the importance of a community for early stage founders and folks building? How important is it, and how should someone go about finding the right kind of community for whatever they're working on?
Yeah, it's super important to just have a group of people that you can relate to, that are worrying about the same things, working on the same types of problems. Because ultimately, we're all very in our own heads and siloed and focused. And sometimes it's tough to take a step back and see the forest from the trees. And I think community helps you do that in a lot of ways. AITX was started because like I mentioned, I was at the firm Foundation Capital for a couple of years and spending a lot of time in the Bay Area. When I was there, it was like every day there were these kind of open meetups where people that are just excited about new advances in AI would just come hang out and meet each other. And when I came to Austin, there's tons of honestly really great communities and meetups here that touch on AI, but none of the ones that I went to kind of scratched that generalist itch, where it's like you want an environment where entrepreneurs that are using the technology, engineers that are building with it and excited about it, and then just general people that are curious to learn more can come without much of an agenda and just meet each other. And I saw a little bit of a gap of that here in Austin. So I decided, all right, let me find some other folks that are connected to the community in different ways, and try to basically bring folks together to just get excited about AI. So what that's turned into is a monthly meetup. There's between 50 and 100 folks that come out. Good mix of founders, engineers, people that are just kind of AI curious. It's very open. There's not a lot of structure. The idea is just come meet people, and then from there you can double down and kind of group up with the other folks that you resonate with personally. The only structure really is that we have demos. So it provides also an opportunity for local AI startups to get in front of potential customers, users,
Get feedback.
Get feedback. Exactly. Yeah, I think it's really important, especially for first-time founders, to find some sort of community. What you're doing when you're building a startup is pretty unique, and it's really important to be around other people that are going through the same things and understand what you're going through. And yeah, I think just whether you're a startup founder or you're a real estate broker or you sell insurance, like it's really helpful to have that community of people that understand the problems you're dealing with, can give you advice, can give you perspective. It just adds a ton of value in a lot of different ways.
How should someone look for community? Because I know there's meetups, there's Capital Factory in Austin, but in general, any advice on how someone, a first-time founder, early stage startups, how can they find that group that's sort of their group?
I think it's events and networking. I never considered myself like a networker up until that was like a big part of my job. But what I realized is that if you just go to events and talk to people in a genuine way, you're networking.
Yeah.
Like ultimately networking is just meeting people that are relevant to your business, to your personal life. Like there's all different directions you can take it. I think a lot of people are scared, but there's tons of online resources to see what's happening in your town. Just go and be friendly and be open-minded. And I think the most important thing is don't be transactional.
Yeah.
Like go in with an open mind, increase your surface area for luck. That's something that has been floating around the internet for a really long time.
Yeah.
But I think especially when you're early in your career, sometimes like when I was at Capital Factory, people that I managed on my team, I would give them this advice. And sometimes, college students or people earlier in their career will ask me for advice. And you really got to kind of get your reps in with the networking circuit, going to a bunch of events, meeting a bunch of people, because ultimately, especially when you're young, you don't have a huge you don't have a ton of experience where you can add value in a lot of different ways. One of the primary ways you can be valuable to other people is by connecting them with others that maybe do have more experience or can help in a very specific way.
Yeah.
And really the only way to build that network and be able to tap in that value is to go out and meet a lot of people in a very open way, where it's like, I don't care if there's nothing that we can do to work together for, 2 years. It was great meeting you. I enjoyed talking, and maybe something comes up down the road, and now you've got a way to reach out to that person and be valuable to them and to someone else that you're connecting with them.
100%. I've made my rounds around town in terms of probably been to every kind of event you can think of. What's worked for me personally is I will never say what I do, why I'm here. I'm always inquisitive about what you're working on, why this space, why this idea, why did you come out here, or do you need help with something particular? And I feel like folks tend to resonate. And I think human tendency is just natural to want to talk about what you're working on, some success you had.
It's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's an easy, so what do you do? And that leads to, oh, tell me about that. It's kind of an easy cop-out way to get to know somebody.
100%.
But I experienced this a bunch when recruiting for Antler's cohorts.
Yeah.
I think when founders talk to most VCs, they care about like the product and the traction, like the go-to-market strategy. And so when you're pitching a VC, you kind of want to just jump in and talk about the business. What's the market? What's the opportunity? What's your product, et cetera. But I mean, what we're evaluating at Antler is really like, tell me about you, right?
100%.
Why are you doing this objectively really difficult, not fun thing of building a company? How did you grow up? What are like experiences that shape the way you see the world or the way that you approach your life or your career? That's all a lot more important at the stage that we're investing in. But I think people, similar to like a networking situation, they would just want to jump straight to like, what do you do? 100%. What are you building, right? What's the product? What's traction? What's growth look like? But it's important to kind of first connect with people on a human level, and
100%.
Then you can layer in the other stuff.
I think there's this notion that founders always have to be pitch, elevator pitch. Here's my 5-minute pitch. Here's my 30-second pitch. At South by, there was a VC event. And so a friend of mine was telling me that he was in the bathroom and there was a VC there, and a founder came and started trying to pitch the
Jesus.
guy. And it's just notion of like, okay, I'm not saying don't do that, but there's
don't do that.
Context.
Don't give someone an elevator pitch at a urinal.
Yes. And it's context, right? It's social context, is understanding, and you understand the founder's dilemma, someone who's trying to raise. It is difficult. I'm not saying it's not, but there's also a lot more that goes into when is the right time to pitch? How do I pitch? What's the right social setting? Are they in the mood for that? Maybe they're there to just have a drink and they don't want to hear a pitch at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's not talked about enough. It's just pitch, here's your pitch, go do this, make this deck, cold email. Like, there's a lot of that, but no one talks about make sure they're in the right situation to absorb what you're going to.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people miss is that you're asking someone for money. They're not just going to give you millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars or like $10, off of just meeting you. Unless you've built and sold a massive company before, no one's rushing to write you a check.
100%.
And like, I coach founders through like this 3-phase process that I learned while I was at Capital Factory, where step 1 is just preparation, right? That's having a pitch deck, understanding your fundraising narrative, what's your strategy, how much are you raising? Very, very important. The difference between I'm raising 500K and I'm raising 2 million, just totally different everything. So having clear answers on all that is phase 1. Phase 2 is what most founders skip. And this is before you ask an investor for money, meet them and get to know them and tell them about yourself, what you're building, learn about them, what they invest in. It's called qualification. And basically it's like, if you've got this list, this universe of 200 potential investors that on paper seem like a good fit, talk to as many as you can, because most of them aren't. And you're not going to get to know that unless you meet them, and approach them not as like, hey, we're this founder building this thing, do you want to invest? Approach it as, hey, we're this founder building in this space. On paper, you seem like a great fit. Can we meet? I'd love your feedback on what we're building and the direction we're going. And then let's stay in touch if you're excited about it. And then when we are raising, then now maybe we can reconnect and talk about, more tactical items like how much we're raising, do you want to invest, things like that. What that allows you to do is build a relationship with them on a human level, not waste your time on trying to immediately pitch them. And then you get to phase 3, which is execution. Now you've got relationships with like 20 to 30 investors and who are engaged and who have met you prior and have been watching you execute because you've been
giving them updates,
sending them investor updates. Exactly. And now when you're circling back around and you say, hey, we're fundraising, can we talk? They know you, they already know what you're working on. They already have a sense of whether or not this is exciting. And so you can kind of cut straight to the chase and be like, hey, let's talk about fundraising. Like the example I like to use is, let's say you're at home and someone knocks on your door and is like, hey, I'm cleaning people's roofs. It costs $1,000. Like, do you want to pay me $1,000 to clean your roof? Really terrible example, but like wait till it gets to the end. It's illustrative of the point, right? Yeah. You're probably going to be like, no, I'm not interested. You're not in the market for roof cleaning right now, right? Whereas now let's say someone knocks on your door and says, hey, just want to introduce myself. My name's Jake. I'm starting a roof cleaning business. I'm working with some of your neighbors. So if you're ever in the market and want your roof cleaned, like reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with you. And then over the course of the next 2 to 3 months, you see them over the weekend, like up on your neighbor's roof, cleaning them off, doing exactly what they said they were going to do. And now 3 months down the road, there's a big storm or whatever, you need your roof cleaned. Now, when this person knocks on your door, they're like, hey, I was just checking, know there was a big storm. Do you want your roof cleaned? Now you're like, yeah, actually I do, because you trust them, you know them, you've watched them execute, right? It's the same thing with asking investors for money. Like investors at the end of the day are underwriting 3 types of risk. It's market risk. Is this market big enough to support a venture scale business? And will people buy this product? The way that you underwrite that type of risk is you look for customer traction and you talk to potential customers to gauge that. And then you can do your own analyses of the market size, whatever. 2 is technology risk. Does the technology actually do what you say it's going to do? Or can you build a platform or a technology that delivers the value proposition that you're talking about? Again, fairly straightforward to underwrite. Like, look at the product. Does the product work? Does the technology do what it says it's going to do? A little nuance there with like deep tech or biotech, et cetera. But in general, like fairly straightforward to underwrite. The third piece and the trickiest piece is execution risk. If I give this founder $2 million, do they know how to deploy that capital to drive enough value for the business that it's either profitable or can raise more money at a higher valuation? The only way to underwrite that is to watch people execute over a long period of time. So with some founders, if you've built a company in the past, if you've sold it in the past, like that's one way to underwrite execution risk. Reference calls is another, but usually that's not enough. And especially for first-time founders, the only real way to do that is for the investor to watch you execute. And the way that you can create that possibility for them is meeting them before your fundraising really, really early, getting their feedback on what they're doing, getting them on investor updates, and then being consistent with showing them, hey, our plan for last month was to close 10 customers. We closed 12. And doing that over 3 to 6 months, that allows the investor to really underwrite your ability to execute and de-risk that piece of the equation and really build the conviction that it takes to write a multi-million-dollar check and fund the company.
I like that. In terms of the 3 categories, just quick tangent, you said market risk, founder risk, technology risk, and
execution risk, which kind of could be classified as founder risk, but within the founder, what they're really underwriting is, if I give them this money, do they know how to use it to create more value for the company?
So just breaking those down. So execution, founder risk, you can prove credibility, you can show execution power, you can sort of de-risk that a little bit. How should founders think about market risk and technology risk? Are there ways to de-risk and increase your chances? Or like, for example, market risk, when you say that, for me, it's sort of not in the founder's control as much. There's a lot that can happen. There's bigger economic factors that take into account.
A little bit. I think what you're really asking is like, how does a founder communicate that this area is de-risked to an investor, which is really important. The biggest way to do it is to calculate your market size using a bottoms up methodology versus top down. Your market size is not, oh, well, the procurement market is this big, and if we capture this much, then like that's the addressable market size. No, it's how many potential customers do you have, and how much revenue on average will those customers give you? If you multiply those two numbers together, that's a bottoms up way to understand in terms of annual revenue potential, which is how public companies are valued as a multiple of their annual revenue, what the market size is, right? Knowing that you're not going to capture 100%, but if you capture 10%, is that still a significant amount of revenue? Is that still enough to be interesting? If it's not, what are other adjacent markets that you're going to be able to enter so that it is big enough? So that's one, is just size the market correctly, bottoms up. And by the way, if you're a founder that wants to build a venture-backed company, you should do this before you start the company as well, so you don't waste your own time. The second piece is just customer attraction, right? Prove that you can get in front of your customer in a scalable, repeatable way, and that they'll buy your product at whatever price point you're selling it at. You don't need the scalability and repeatability if you're at the seed stage or pre-seed stage, but that's your goal. Your goal to get to like Series A, which is when the company is really up and running, doing more than $1 million in revenue, that's when I think you have a real significant business. Series A ready means that you've got a scalable, repeatable sales motion where, you know, if I put $10 into this methodology, it produces at least 11 out the other end. Or if you're going for scale immediately, which is kind of like the traditional way things have been done over the last 5 years, like how much incremental revenue does every $10 of input get you in terms of output, and where does that put you? So like that's how you communicate de-risking the market side of things. And ultimately the investors are going to do their own analysis. They're going to talk to their own potential customers, but from the founder perspective, it's size it correctly, bottoms up, and show customer traction. Even if it's as little as you have one customer, like try to underwrite your ability to reach that customer and try to explain how many of those customers there are, right? There's 1,000 companies that match the same criteria of this, our first design partner, our first pilot customer.
I like it. And how should founders think about technology risk?
Technology risk, with a lot of SaaS companies, there's not a ton of that, right? It's fairly straightforward what you're doing. It's really just like building a product that works.
To clarify, is technology risk the risk of not building scalable technology, or is it building some sort of technology that doesn't work, fails, or?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Good question. One part of technology risk is like, does this work? I can't remember the name of the company, but there was some company that was using AI for accounting, right? Fully automated accounting, bookkeeping, etc. Came out that it was actually just a lot of humans on the back end. There was no tech there, and the company crashed and burned because there's no differentiation there. They're just a bookkeeping shop, right? So that's one kind of technology risk. And they had basically sold to investors that like, hey, we're building towards this technology that can do this fully automated. Just didn't work out, right? The second type of technology risk is kind of what you're describing, which is like, is it scalable enough, et cetera? It's hard to like communicate that. I think that seed investors, you want to just be able to have a sophisticated conversation about how this is going to work at scale. But a lot of those problems are solved already. So I think that's less of something that investors are worried about from a tech risk standpoint. You know, unless you're an engineer by training, you're going to talk to other engineers or CTOs in your portfolio or people that understand the risk of, you know, like, oh, after a certain point, like this technology is no longer scalable. There's a component of it about unit economics, but again, like at the stage that I'm focused on, that's a problem that you figure out down the road, right? You can try to understand up front, like if I get to scale, will I have some sort of leverage with unit economics? Exactly. I mean, you've got to be profitable at a certain point. But when I'm personally looking at underwriting tech risk, I'm not as worried about that.
Okay. Would you say there's a certain weightage? Are these all equally weighted?
Execution is most important. Execution and market. Well, they're all important. They're kind of all equally weighted, but in terms of how the investor thinks about it, again, it's very straightforward to underwrite the first two types, market and
100%.
tech risk. Execution risk is the most complicated. And that's where investors have to build their conviction. And that's where investors mostly spend most of their time.
Makes sense.
Is building conviction in the founders.
The reason I ask is I know a couple guys who are working on startups, but they're running into a founder fit issue where maybe they come from a services background or a real estate background or something non-tech, and they're building B2B SaaS or B2C customer or whatever. And good idea, great product market, everything works, but investors think they're not the right person to do this because execution risk. And that's why I'm asking how important. I know there's probably different wages for different investors.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, any good idea is going to have a bunch of people building to try to address it. And the question of like, why you is very important.
Yeah.
Why are you going to succeed and all these other people are not? Or what's your unique insight to this area? So I think they just need to get really, really clear on that argument. Why them? And if that argument is just we're going to outwork the competitors, then it's just a matter of getting investors to believe you.
Yeah.
And that then goes into execution risk. Yeah. The only way you can prove that is by proving it over time, right?
100%.
And just keeping people in the loop as you're validating that.
I like it. I saw a LinkedIn post where you wrote about the startup ecosystem and the flywheel that needs to be created. And you talked about every startup ecosystem flywheel will need investors willing to invest really early, pre-product market fit. What are some qualities that you look for in an ideal founder before investing? And then what is the difference, or maybe, I don't know if you want to speak to this enough, but what is the difference when investing pre-product market fit versus post-product market fit?
Yeah, good question. I'll address the second one first of the difference because it's a pretty straightforward. If you're investing post-product market fit, the way that I define product market fit is you've got a scalable, repeatable sales process. And so if you're investing post-product market fit, you're really investing in pouring fuel on that fire and scaling it, and then entering any adjacent opportunities that come up to build a really big business. Pre-product market fit, what you're betting on is the ability to find that scalable, repeatable process. And when you're pre-product market fit, the actual product matters a lot less than the space that they're playing in, right? Because within any given space, there's a bunch of different customers. They have a bunch of different desires or problems that they're addressing. And each of those can be addressed by very different value propositions. When you're investing post-product market fit, all of those variables are locked in, right? They've locked in a specific type of customer. They've locked in a desire of that customer. They've locked in a value proposition to address it. They've built a product to deliver that value proposition. And now they're focusing on taking it to market. So all those variables are locked. When you're investing pre-product market fit, specifically, I'd say like pre-seed, because seed stage, you want them to at least have a few of those variables locked. There's a lot of variability there. And what you're really investing in is their ability to figure out those things, to go through that iterative process of talking to different customers, figuring out what they want, figuring out how you can deliver it to them until you align on a set of those variables that can help you reach escape velocity and build a really huge company. So that's to answer like the second part of your question. The first part of your question of like, how do you evaluate founders? We've gotten pretty good at that at Antler because that's all we're evaluating. So one thing that we look for is really deep first principles level thinking. So again, I mentioned it earlier, but asking why.
Yeah.
And then asking why did they answer to that? And then asking why did they answer to that? Just really understanding that they're thinking about this from a very principled way and that their logic and chain of thinking makes a lot of sense. The second is a bias to execution, right? Is this somebody who is going to wait and be really perfectionist about everything? Or is this someone that is going to put out something that's really imperfect, but is good enough to get feedback and then iterate based on that feedback? Really, really, really important. Third is like their ambition, their drive. One of the GPs in New York, Jeff Becker, calls them like maniacs. Like, are they obsessed with this problem? Are they obsessed with this space? Are they maniacal in the way that they try to build a company to address some of these problems? That's another thing we look for. And then last is just like, are you impressed by the person? Would you want to work for this person? The job of the CEO, once you like post product market fit, it's fundraising, it's recruiting, and it's strategic direction.
100%.
And all of those require you to be a person that I would be excited to work for. So really just kind of getting a sense for those criteria. That's kind of the framework that I use to evaluate founders.
Makes sense. I like that. Quick divulsion on pre-seed, seed, A, B, C, D. Like there's hundreds of rounds, right?
Oh yeah.
In your perspective or the way you look at it, can you very quickly break down like an angel round, a pre-seed round, a seed round, A, B? Like what do they mean? I know everyone has like a slightly different, but like from your point of view,
Yeah.
At what stage is what, and what round are you raising? What stage do you fall into?
Round names, you can have a $8 million pre-seed round, or you can have a $100,000 pre-seed round, right? Yeah. The way I think about it, my framework is pre-seed is raising money to build a product and start getting it in front of customers.
Got it.
Your seed round is to find product market fit, to take that product and figure out your scalable, repeatable go-to-market process. That's what the seed money's for. If you haven't figured that out by the time your seed money runs out, there might not be escape velocity there. Series A is to double down on that scalable, repeatable sales process, pour fuel on that fire, and use it to capture market share. And then Series B and beyond is either capturing unit economics, getting leverage from your technology to make your business more profitable, or entering adjacencies. So applying some of the same technology you've built or the customer segment you've developed a relationship with, and then applying that to a different customer segment, or selling that customer segment a different product. And that's kind of Series B and beyond, is just capturing unit economics and entering adjacent markets.
Makes sense. Is there ever a point where there's companies in seed A, B that have lost product market fit along the way, or at a point where it worked and then something happened where it's not working anymore? Like, does that happen? Or
that's a good question. I don't know who did this quote, but they said like product market fit is a liquid, not a solid.
Yeah.
I think it was someone from Foundation Capital. I could be wrong about that, but that's, I think, a really insightful way to think about it, right? Is like you're constantly keeping product market fit and adjusting, how you're marketing it or how you're delivering the solution or whatever to fit what customers really want. It's a constantly evolving and iterative process. I think what ended up happening during a lot of like the craziness within COVID and the venture and funding market is companies that hadn't found product market fit started being able to raise like Series A and growth rounds. And that's causing a lot of the downturn that you're seeing today, where these companies never quite found product market fit and still weren't able to because they're raising capital to scale. And if you're scaling something that doesn't have product market fit from the get-go, it becomes really hard to kind of be fluid and tweak things to find it. So yeah, it's a really good question. Like, I think it does probably evolve and change over time, but it's always going to look kind of similar to what you find initially, I think.
I think episode 2, I had a founder on, Lakon, sold Nigeria's largest job board, building his third or fourth company now. I asked him what PMF for him meant. Really unique take that I hadn't heard till then was, if your customer renews their annual subscription or like keeps using you the second, third time around, that's when you know you have good product market fit, because the first time you get them on a call, you convince them to sign a contract, an annual contract. That's like purely sales at that point. But their choice to renew is when you know you've at least got something that they want. It's not 100% market fit, but it's a different way to look at.
At Antler, Tyler Norwood, he's the managing partner of Antler US. He talks about there's a difference between a value proposition to a customer and a product to a customer.
Yeah.
A value proposition is just delivering what they want, right? And you can validate value propositions, or that you have the right value proposition, with things like a wait list or signups, right? Or when you talk about this value prop, do customers' eyes light up, right? That's different than the product. How you measure the product is the way that you deliver the value proposition. And that's when you start measuring things like retention, renewals, et cetera.
Yeah.
You can have the right value proposition
With the wrong product.
With the wrong product, exactly. And so, yeah, I think finding the right products and measuring those things of like retention, engagement, et cetera, that shows that not only do you have the right value proposition, but you're delivering it in the right way where it has some semblance of product market fit.
I like that. This is a random sidebar. But I was just thinking about, so when you're working in an accelerator, you're working with a bunch of other startups. There's always a notion for startups to be like, oh, let me use your tool and like support you. Oh, let me use your tool and support you. What's your take on, like, I'm not saying startups shouldn't leverage other startups, but from the point of view of how do I make sure that I'm succeeding in what I'm building, would you suggest you use a friend's company who's solving the problem or go to like a known solution?
Let me think about it let me talk about it from kind of the other angle, which is like you're a startup and you want early users.
Yeah.
And oftentimes other batch mates or cohort mates could be early users. The thing to keep in mind about that is those customers, listing those people as customers is not going to be as impactful to investors as listing larger, more established companies.
Makes sense.
Because startups die all the time, right? And so you end up having kind of the leaky bucket problem if your customers are largely startups, because a lot of them will run out of money or not be able to pay or just straight up die and not exist anymore and not exist. I think having startups as early customers is great in terms of figuring out, do I have the right product? Am I solving the right, or am I creating the right value proposition, right? If those startups fit within your kind of target customer segment, then great. But think about it much more in terms of validating the value prop and getting great feedback on the product, as opposed to like, oh, this is go-to-market traction. It is to an extent, but what's more important there is that you have customers that are larger, more established, and won't churn quite as much. And this is obviously for like a B2B company.
100%.
Yeah.
The reason I asked was I was just thinking from the point of view of, you were saying with the right value prop, the wrong product. I feel like there's some situations where, because I'm a startup, I'm using other startups, I'm also helping them figure out their product. It's time and energy away from me solving the right problem, figuring out the right product. It's energy. I probably doesn't matter in the long run, but just how do I make sure I have the most effective thing out there and not worry about this thing failing, that thing
I definitely wouldn't use a substandard solution, right? If you use it and it's not very good, go use the thing that you know is good, right? If there's nothing else that you've seen out there like it, then use it. And then if you find something better, be willing to switch, right? Don't be committed to it just because it's someone that you know or like, right? But give it a try.
100%. Yeah. Sweet. AI is the hype right now. Everyone's on the AI train. Everyone has AI in everything they're doing. Is there something within the space that is more interesting to you? And this can be outside of just Antler startups, just in general. What's exciting you in the AI space? I think you wrote about AI instructors, AI education, AI tutoring, which hasn't disrupted yet, or you haven't seen a really good solution. Similar to that, is there something in the AI space where super exciting to you, you're looking for the next advancement there, or just something that is catching your eye?
Yeah, for sure. We talked about earlier, like AI is just how you build software now. Two areas that I'm really interested in. One is personalized education and learning, which I just think language models are good at taking information and regurgitating it in different ways. And so that creates the opportunity for you to have this very personalized way of you learning new
100%.
things. And so that's exciting. And I think that goes all the way to like how we consume information. There's really cool companies out there that are making scientific papers and white papers easier to digest and consume for just lay people that don't have a PhD in the field. And I think that broadens then the scope of what we can actually learn. It's really hard for me, or maybe not you, but for me to like follow a white paper about new advances in machine learning if I'm just reading the raw white paper. Like, it takes a long time and a lot of effort.
Very dense.
It's very dense. Yeah. And if you can condense that, make it less dense, explain it like you would to like a 15-year-old, right? There's a fun side project idea called Explain Like I'm 15 that I've thought of. That's like, how do you take something complex and explain it to a 15-year-old? Anyways,
what's the difference in Explain Like I'm 5 and 15? Like, because
5-year-olds are not as smart as 15-year-olds, right? You can get a little bit more in depth with 15-year-olds. But So, I mean, that's one opportunity, is just the ability to make knowledge more accessible and more personalized and more digestible. The second I'm excited about is like verticalized software. Um, I think in the 2010s, there's lots of horizontal platforms where they're solving a problem that exists across different industries. And when you think about new forms of AI like language models, the way that they're most effective is when they have specific context, right? We hear a lot about RAG, retrieval augmented generation. That's when you specifically say, hey, answering this prompt, ChatGPT or LLM XYZ, I want you to do it with reference to all of these details and all of this data. And that's how you get much more complex and relevant output. And that sort of architecture system really lends itself to, if you have proprietary data pipelines for a specific industry or use case, then you can start to create a data flywheel where your output gets fine-tuned and then fed back into the model, which provides better output, which then gets fine-tuned, which feeds back into the model, and so on and so forth. And so there's lots of opportunities where lots of industries are using a bunch of different point solutions, a lot of these different horizontal solutions, and they're spending a lot of money on it, but also having to like context switch and learn lots of different systems,
workflows, interactions,
exactly.
UXs.
And so there's opportunities for companies to come in and say, hey, maybe we don't have all the bells and whistles of this one horizontal platform, but we have everything that you need in your industry, and we're going to consolidate that with all of these other things and use some of these new AI capabilities to create a really robust solution that's hyper specific to this industry. So that's another area where I'm super excited. There's a company in town called Novel in Antler's residency. They're building this for, a specific niche within engineering, right? There's lots of opportunities that are really interesting there. And then I think related to that too, we've all kind of experienced this problem with having to learn new software tools and UIs. I think a big thing that people hate about Salesforce and even HubSpot to an extent is like, there's literally an industry of people that just learned how to use this software so that they can build all the capabilities that it has out for your business. Yeah. It's super complex. And when I think about, what is a UI, right? It's basically a way for us to communicate what we want to a computer in a way that the computer understands, right? I know that if I click this button to filter down my CRM by people that are experts at marketing, that now it knows, okay, let me find all the marketing experts. But ultimately, we're just taking what we want and communicating it with the computer. Yeah. And I think like natural language and LLMs present really like a total shift in the way that we can communicate with computers. Where now,
so the idea of a chat UX, right? Like the idea,
sort of, yeah, just like a natural language, like a headless application.
Yeah.
Like imagine a CRM where I could say, hey, show me all the marketing experts in my network. And rather than clicking a button to filter down by this criteria and find marketing, it just knows exactly what you want and it does that for you and just presents you the information.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about voice applications, headless applications, people using like text or voice as the new UI. There's a really cool company called Peas Money, which is focused on joint money management. So with your roommates, with your romantic partners, with your family, just creating a way that you can interact with these people. And they've got a really great web app with all kind of the bells and whistles, but oftentimes like what you want to do is you want to just be able to talk to someone. And so they've created an entirely text message based interface where you don't even have to download an application to get the value from it. And I think you can apply that across a lot of different use cases. And I'm really excited about companies that are rethinking the way that we engage with software through like these types of headless applications. I'm also super interested in what are the infrastructure pieces that need to get built to enable those types of software or solutions. So like, I mean, I can see a world where 5 years from now, we're primarily just like talking to computers to get things done. And there's a lot less clicking and a lot less filtering and a lot more just describing what we want. And the computer is able to understand that and get it done for us. So that's, I think, the third like pie in the sky, less specific, but just where I think the world is going that I'm excited about.
I think I saw a demo on a podcast probably a year and a half ago, where there's someone at Chaba is like, add this lead to Salesforce list XYZ. And it logs into Salesforce, it goes and finds the list and like does everything on its own, adds the list, adds the context, I don't know where that is right now, if they've built it more or not, but just that idea of like, go do X or tell me where X is. And it's funny you mentioned HubSpot. I'm talking to a HubSpot consultant because I want to set up a personal CRM. And I'm just like, is this the right solution for me? Is it not? Should I just do an Excel sheet? No.
Let's talk about that, because I've helped a bunch of people set up personal CRMs.
Okay, yeah,
and it's
sure,
like
for sure.
Airtable and automations,
Yeah.
and I've got some templates that
Okay,
can
sweet.
help
That
with
would be
I
great.
think.
That would be great. Just,
Sorry, HubSpot.
No,
Love you guys.
Sponsors podcast. You talk and meet a lot of startups, and you talk to a lot of founders. You've been in this space for a while. One thing that you've seen first time or early stage founders get wrong quite often, and then one thing that they should focus on more that people just tend to ignore.
Yeah. There's
They could be the
bunch.
same
It's
thing,
a good
yeah.
question. Yeah. I mean, one common problem, and we've talked about it a lot already, is like jumping straight to product. I think that's a big problem, because then you're essentially trying to work backwards from the product to figure out, okay, what problem is this product solving and who has that problem that I can sell it to?
Yeah.
And it makes a lot more sense to work forward in an iterative way to develop the product versus starting with the product and working backwards.
100%. And
think
then you
this-
also get tied to whatever you've built.
Exactly.
And you don't allow yourself to like break out of that, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Sunk
like-
cost fallacy to some extent, but no. Yeah.
100% sunk cost fallacy. That's what it is. I mean, there's an emotional piece of it as well, but I mean, this is your baby. The question though is like, even if it's your baby, do you want to spend another 2 to 3 years spinning your wheels and not really getting anywhere? Or do you know when to kind of cut your losses and find something else? So now 3 years from now, you can actually really be up and running. So yeah, that's definitely a problem I see founders make. The second is what I talked about with fundraising. Just like going straight to pitching and asking for money before like actually getting to know the investor and letting them get to know you. The third is just not understanding venture capital. The business is really hard, right? If you've got like the math, the back of the napkin math, whatever the size of the fund is, they need to return 3 times that.
Yeah.
Different funds have different ownership targets, but you can assume like just a general heuristic, most seed funds are targeting to have close to 10% at the time of exit. So that exit value, which is 3 times the fund size at a minimum, you then need to have exit value of 10 times that, because they only own 10%, right? And so those numbers become massive really quickly, right? If you've got a $500 million fund, that means you need $1.5 billion of returns to LPs at a minimum, which means you need $15 billion of exit value in order to get like 10% of that. Exactly. And again, that's just like it's a good fund, but it's not a great fund. Like usually you're targeting like 4 to 5x overall returns. And so the numbers are just massive. And if you're in a business where the whole market size is like $1 billion or $2 billion, it's probably not big enough, because you're not going to capture 100% of it. And even if you do, like, this is the crazy thing. If you've got a fund that size, if you exit for $1 billion and they own 10% of your company, that's $100 million, right? And let's say they invest 5 million up front, right? It's a 20x return. That's really good, right? Depends on the fund size, right? Because if it's $100 million out of 1.5 billion total, that's less than 10% of what they totally need, right? They need companies exiting. They need multiple exiting for 5 billion or more to return that fund. And really what the model is building in is one company is going to be worth close to 15 billion. And that's going to allow kind of the economics to work out for everyone involved. And so I think especially in Texas, where that type of back of the napkin math isn't quite as understood, there's a lot of founders that get frustrated because they get told the market size isn't big enough. And the truth is it's not, because they haven't performed this bottoms up analysis and understood what they need. And venture capital just isn't a fit there. Doesn't mean anything about the business opportunity, right? If you own 20% of a company that's valued at $100 million, you have $20 million worth of value. If you own 5% of a company that's worth $2 billion, you have $100 million worth of value.
Yeah.
You have less, right? So ultimately it's about the founder and what they care about and what they want to do,
100%,
right? Like,
100%.
I mean, there are ideas where I would want to raise venture capital to build a business. But for most business ideas that I've had, I don't want to go raise VC. I want to be able to solve a problem for someone, build something valuable, and then sell it and buy a house for me and my family, right? And give myself some more financial freedom. And those businesses don't make sense for a venture capitalist to invest in. The only ones that do is when you're really so passionate about this that you're going to build it for 10 plus years and it's big enough that it can be a huge multi-billion-dollar business at the end of the day.
I think what you said about the founder knowing what they want is very important, right? If you want a payday, work towards structuring it so you know you're going to make something out of it, right? Mm-hmm. Also, if you're a first-time founder, you don't have credibility, you don't have cash in pocket, you don't have a backer. My take is always a smaller piece of a bigger pie is worth more than the whole pie that's worth nothing, right? Like,
the whole pie then that's worth nothing, but it's to an extent, right?
Yeah.
Like if you end up raising a ton of venture capital and then selling the company for a big amount, but you own 5% of it, like what ends up happening a lot of times is founders could have sold for a less amount earlier before they raised that
bigger
money,
chunk.
But because they own more, they end up netting the same.
Yeah.
But they've now spent an extra 3-4 years, like really grinding, opportunity costs, and they got the same outcome.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, venture capital in general is changing in a lot of ways. Like angel investors have very different sets of incentives
100%.
Than a fund does. An angel investor just wants a multiple and a return that's better than they would get by investing it in the market on like a risk adjusted basis.
Yeah.
And so if it exits early, but they get 3 times their money in like 2 years, they're pretty pumped about that. Yeah. Whereas a VC, like that's actually a bad outcome because now they've wasted that check where they could have invested it in another company that's still on that trajectory to be really, really huge.
100%.
So yeah, I think like founders oftentimes think that's the only way to get funding is venture capital. And it's not. And I think
read venture deals. So.
Yeah. But also think about like, what could you do if you just raise angel funding, and could you build a profitable business to where now you don't need to keep raising money to build the business? And again, if what you want is to just build something valuable, but you don't care about it being publicly traded or running it 15 years from now or whatever, then don't raise VC. Like no one wins there. Like everyone just loses.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I do this thing where I ask every guest to give me a question for a future guest. So your question is, how big do you want to succeed and why?
Who gave you that question?
A past guest. I can look it up.
How big do you want to succeed and why? I really want to be able to point to multiple specific things that change the way the world works in some way and say that I built that or I was instrumental in building that. And whether that's through starting a business or through investing in businesses that do that, or through just changing the way that companies can raise money and get funded and build their businesses, that's kind of what I want to be able to look back in their rear view or point to as like a success for me. And I think I want that to be something that's big and impactful and is broader than just something that's local or small or in a community. I want it to be kind of like worldwide or at least US wide. But I'd also be happy being able to point to like something that's more local. But when I think long term, I want the impact to be probably bigger. Nice. I don't know if that's a direct answer to your question.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So what's one question you have for a future guest?
Oh, good one. What is something that you think you uniquely can share with the world?
Nice. Sweet. But
and why?
Sweet.
Like, why are you uniquely suited, basically? The founder market fit question. Because you talked to a lot of founders on here, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. But that's all I had for you. Thank you for coming on. Where can listeners reach out to you? Anything you want to plug? Where can they find out more about what you're working on?
Yeah. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Try to stay on top of that for sure. If you're someone considering starting a company, please reach out. Let's see if Antler is a good fit for you. If you've got a company and are committed to going the venture capital route, haven't raised a lot of external capital, and are looking for a team that can scale with you globally and through multiple stages of funding, please reach out. LinkedIn's good. If you're in Austin, come out to one of the AITX community meetups.
We'll link all that in the description.
Please do. We just launched a San Antonio chapter.
I saw that.
We've got a chapter in Round Rock. So really just trying to provide a forum for people interested in building with AI to meet each other. But yeah, I think those are the main things. JakeO'Shea.com is my foray into like coding and teaching myself website building.
Nice.
So I list all the little side projects that I work on there, and I link back to like, I'll link to this podcast, other podcasts I've been on. Yeah, hit me up. LinkedIn's probably the best if you want to get in touch with me.
Sweet. Well, thank you for coming on.